Alright, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College. And as part of the Rankin Technical College Application and Website Development, or AWD program for the fall 2019 semester, one of the classes that, or the class the second year students take, is AWD 1111 .NET Framework with Web Databases. For this class, the students are going to use the following textbook: Pro ASPnet MVC 5, an A-Press text by Adam Freeman. And the book has 27 chapters and about 832 pages. If we look quickly here at the table of contents, I kind of break it up into at least 3 sections. The first section is the first 6 chapters, putting ASP.NET in context, your first MVC application, the MVC pattern, essential language features, working with Razor, and essential tools for MVC. That's kind of the intro. That's the getting going, so to speak. Chapters 7 through 13 are a real-world project called Sports Store. All right. Then really chapters 14 on go into a lot of the earlier stuff in more detail. All right, there's an overview of MVC projects. There's a couple chapters here on routing. There's a controllers chapter, a filters chapter, more controllers, views, helper methods, more on helper methods. All right, model binding, model validation, bundles, and web API. All right, well, why am I telling you all this? Because what I am going to do is I'm going to start going over the book. All right, I've got a PDF copy right here, and I'm literally going to go through chapter by chapter in the textbook. I do not claim that I am an ASP.NET expert. I've taught it for a few years. I always think that I learn as much as the students do when I teach the class. All right, so I'm just going to start up with chapter 1, putting ASP.NET MVC in context. It's a very short chapter. As they say here, ASP.NET MVC is a web development framework from Microsoft that combines the effectiveness and tidiness of the model view controller architecture along and hopefully with the best parts of the ASP.NET platform. All right. They give you a history of ASP.NET shown on the bottom of the page here, and it's kind of 3-tiered, as you can see. As it says, ASP.NET was a huge shift when it arrived in 2002, meaning that it's about 17 plus years old. All right, so this was the Microsoft technology stack as it appeared back then. Do we have to go over that? I don't see any reason to really go over it. Let's just say this, that in the past, when I taught this class a couple years ago, we used a textbook that had about 25 chapters in it. Chapter 25 was on Model View Controller. The first 24 chapters were on using ASP.NET Web Forms. All right, the tide has changed, it's reversed, whatever you want to call it, over the years. This is a book, the one that we're using, that concentrates on using Model View Controller. So, what's wrong with MVC Forms? Again, it's not my goal in here to read to you. All right? The point, though, is technically there's nothing wrong with ASP.NET Web Forms. And what I mean by that is ASP.NET Web Forms are in use today by quite a few companies. But many companies have converted or started to convert over to using MVC. And here's some of the reasons. The view state in traditional web forms is hard to work with. The page lifecycle is kind of weird. It can be, as it says, extraordinarily complicated and delicate. There's a false separation of concerns. This to me is one of the big ones, because what you find in ASP.NET Model View Controller is a definite SOC, or separation of concerns, between the model component, the view component, and the controller component. All right? You've got limited control over the HTML, leaky abstraction, and it's not that great for testability. Now notice what it says here. Web Forms isn't all bad, and Microsoft has put a lot of effort into making them better. All right? Which is always a good thing. Outside Microsoft, web development technology has been progressing rapidly. Sure, that's true. And again, realize that this book is about 5 or so years old. All right, 4 to 5 years old. So when it says HTML5 has begun to enter the mainstream use and provides the web developer with rich capabilities, that's true, and it does. In fact, as mentioned here, today's web applications don't serve just HTML. They may also serve JSON, which is JavaScript object notation, and or XML, the extensible markup language, as well. All right. As mentioned here on the bottom of page 3, it's not just that web development has matured, software development as a whole has matured. There has been a gradual paradigm shift toward Agile methodologies. The idea, in my humble opinion, with Agile technologies is rather than having long development cycles. Back when I was programming full-time, our development cycles could be anywhere from 1 to 3 years. Now you have a very shortened development cycle, or a series of short development cycles. All right. Test-driven development has become more popular over the years. All right. There's other products, like there's Ruby on Rails, there's Node.js, and there's other ones. In fact, there has been talk of changing or adding a Node.js class here at Rankin Technical College. Is that going to happen? I guess, as the saying goes, only time will tell. I don't know. So why should you use ASP.NET? All right, what does it offer? Okay, really, what's, why? They mention here it's important to distinguish between the MVC architectural pattern and the ASP.NET framework. The pattern itself is not new. Notice 78, that's 40 years ago. All right, they're saying that it has gained popularity today as a pattern for a couple reasons. First, user interaction with an MVC app follows a natural cycle. Second, web applications necessitate combining several methodologies, normally split into different tiers or layers. The ASP.NET framework implements the MVC pattern and provides greatly improved separation of concerns. We're going to get into all that as we go on. All right, extensibility. The MVC framework, again, is built as a series of independent components. As it says, in general, the MVC framework gives you 3 options for each component. Use the default implementation, derive a subclass of the default, or replace it completely with whatever you want to do. Tight control over HTML and HTTP. As mentioned here, ASP.NET MVC produces clean, standards-compliant markup. Its built-in helper methods, which again we will go over in detail, produce standards compliant output. But there's a more philosophical change. Instead of generating out swaths of HTML over which you have little control, the MVC framework encourages you to craft simple, elegant markup that you style with CSS. We already talked a little bit about testability. The MVC architecture gives you a great start in making your application more maintainable and testable. In this book, one of the things that the author has done in most of the chapters in the book is that he creates a sample application. And almost always with that sample application, one of the things that he does is he shows how he would create unit tests to do what it is he wants to do, or to show you what it is he wants to show you. All right. Powerful routing system. Well, the idea is, if you look up on this, if you look on the screen here, what's in blue right there is typically referred to as a query string. All right, and it's hard for most end users to read that and know what they're talking about. On the other hand, this is more of what's typically referred to as a pretty URL or a clean URL. In the past, these clean URLs were difficult to implement, but as mentioned a little bit later on this page, ASP.NET MVC uses a feature called URL routing, so that by default you will be provided clean URLs. ASP.NET, as mentioned right here, is based on the .NET platform. So you've got the flexibility to write code in any .NET language. We will be using C# as we used C# last semester. Second, as mentioned here, some of the ready-made ASP.NET features, including authentication, membership, roles, profiles, and internationalization, can reduce the amount of code that you need to create. MVC is open source. You can download the MVC source code from right there. So, chapter 1 ends here by saying, what do you need to know? To get the most from this book, you should have at least a beginning knowledge of HTML, CSS, and C#. The good news is, the first course that you took as part of the AWD program taught you HTML and CSS. The second course that you took taught you C#. So the author says here that the book is split into two parts. Part 1, which introduces ASP.NET, and Part 2, which has got the Sports Core application and what follows. I will be providing, or you can get it yourselves, the example or the code for all of the examples of the book in APress, from APress. Now, that said, just so that you're aware of it, you may care, you may not care, but I plan on doing virtually everything I have time to do from the book online in front of you. And I will not have, you'll have to trust me on this, so trust me or don't, but I will not have the code in front of me. I've tried a couple of the things and very little of it's worked so far from the book. All right? So that's it. Now, that was quick, down and dirty. Chapter 2 is kind of the antithesis of Chapter 1 in that it's long, it's kind of verbose, but it's a really, really good chapter in that it does show you how to create your first MVC application. Please be cognizant of the fact that while you are creating this, it may or may not make a whole heck of a lot of sense. All right? Also, to kind of give you a primer for what we'll be working on in here, and let me bring this up. On my YouTube channel, and if you're watching this, you already know where my YouTube channel is. All right, but what I want you to see is on my YouTube channel for this class, which is called Fall 2019 ASP.NET AWD1111, I already have out there 29 videos. All right. The first thing that I did was come up with some ASP.NET. I'll just show it to you. Interview questions. And these interview questions are from C#corner.com. So what I did was I went through these 50 questions. No, I did not answer everyone. No, I did not go over everyone. All right, but I went over quite a few of the ones that are in there. And what I did were I took 10 questions at a time. First 10, second 10, third 10, fourth 10, fifth 10. All right, so those questions are in there. Then I also went over a series of articles from Dotnet Odyssey. And just to quickly show you that, I'm not even sure how I found this. But when you come over here, you'll notice ASP.NET MVC 5 free course. So what I did was I went through all 12 of the lessons. It wasn't a smooth ride. All right, I made some mistakes, but I plan on going through this with my class during the first week. There's 12 total lessons or chapters or whatever you want to call it in here. And what I have done is gone through all those lessons. One thing that you'll find about me if you watch enough of my videos, I'm not afraid to make mistakes. All right, it's not that I go out and try to make mistakes, but I just naturally make my share anyway. So when I come back in just a couple moments, I'm going to start going through Chapter 2, your first MVC application.